Right, guys, welcome back to Phoenix Fantasy Football Show. I'm joined by Dan once again from Red Devils TV. Dan, if you just want to say hello.
Hi mate, obviously I'm very happy to help out charity, so let's do it. Obviously,
Well, I mean,
no
the
mate.
way that it's going, this is now two videos that you've now joined. One more, and you'll be classed as a co-host. Um, But we're going to get straight into this video today, and the first subject is Tottenham's new manager. Now, obviously, coming from Celtic, he was at Celtic for 2 years, and he's left just after winning the treble. Now, is this now Tottenham on the rise? Is this Tottenham potentially going to be contenders for a Champions League spot next season? Dan, what do you think? Do you think he could bring Champions League to Tottenham?
I feel like that every big club wants to gain Champions League football. There's probably about six, seven clubs now in the Premier League that all think they can get top four, and that just shows the absolute classness that actually is in the Premier League. The Premier League is the best league in the world. You don't have the same individuals constantly in the top four, apart from Man City. So obviously Liverpool have dropped off this previous season, but no doubt they'll be fighting for it next season. I mean, even with Liverpool, we gave United fans and Newcastle fans a bit of a scare when they started climbing up the table, and they were only like 2 points
Hmm.
off Newcastle, and obviously they drew to Aston Villa, which is what lost them that spot. But with Spurs, obviously, I do consider them one of them teams that do normally get in the top four. I think they've been in the top four. I think it's 4 times in the last 8 or something. So especially but
Yeah,
that's mainly under the Pochettino era, and then I think it was the first
yeah,
season under Jose Mourinho as well. But with Tottenham, they are a decent side, but I think they just ran poorly. And obviously, this new manager, obviously, was just won the treble with Celtic. Now, recently, we've seen that Steven Gerrard has come from Rangers to the Premier League, and he did okay in his first season, but in the following season, he dropped off massively. So it's kind
yeah.
of seeing that will his football work in the Premier League? Now, obviously, with this manager, is it Polinoglu or something? I think he's called. So he's got
Yeah.
some weird name anyway. But with this manager, the way he plays football is a lot more attacking, and it's something that Spurs aren't normally used to playing. So with players who've been there for a while, like Heung-min Son, Harry Kane, Højbjerg, Eric Dyer, Lloris, all these
Yeah.
players that have been here for multiple years, it depends if they can deal with this, because they're so used to playing it out from the back five, lots of protectiveness in the defence, and they do score goals, but they don't. They're not as consistent when it comes to goal scoring, especially when they've got Harry Kane, who's one of the most
Hmm.
prolific goal scorers in the Premier League. So with this Spurs manager, it can either go very well or very poorly. Obviously, it's very hard to tell as we've not seen him in action as pre-season's not started yet. But I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
that he will have the most ambition to try and get top four. But with the likes of United, Newcastle, City, Liverpool, Chelsea might have a good season next season. It's all if buts and maybes, but there'll definitely be a lot of competition for top four next season, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you mentioned Harry Kane there, so we'll go on to this just now. Obviously, United have been there's been links, rumours, there's been talks about Harry Kane coming to United. Do you think with Tottenham's new manager coming in now that Harry Kane's going to stay? And do you think that the whole sale of United has maybe changed Harry Kane's mind on coming over to United because of the way that the Glaziers are handling the sale and the fact that it's to and fro constantly at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I've not done a video on the sale update. Obviously, we had massive news last night that the Qataris have now reached pole position, and they are in the front runners of the possible sale. And the way I feel like it's happened, I'm going to mention this on my channel later. So it's the first time I mentioned this on camera, so you're getting a bit of an exclusive here. But with the sale, it seems to me that the Qataris were like, okay, let's try and get United for as cheap as possible, and obviously they just tried for trying lowballing. But then as Sergeant Ratcliffe getting closer and closer to the deal, and obviously offering the Glazers a buyout clause and stuff, like offering them more money. I think they've just gone, bang, there's your 7 million, there's your 7 billion, give us the United and we'll take it from there. That's what I think's happened. It's been like a racetrack where Sergio Ratcliffe's been running the entire race and then he pulls his hamstring, or like Qataris get a nitro boost or something, or take a kind of monster and we just sprint past him and then they just win the race. That's the way I think it's happened, because I think the Qataris, they want United so bad. I mean, there's rumours that, that the Qataris were going to buy out Spurs or West Ham if the sale wasn't going to go through. I don't think that was going to happen ever. I think that Qataris are set and nailed on Man United and they're doing everything in their power to get Man United. But to go back with Harry Kane, I don't think it's more down to the Glazers. I think it's more down to the Spurs owner, Daniel Levy, because with Daniel Levy, he's made it openly clear that Harry Kane is not for sale for a Premier League club. So that's kind of stiffed Harry Kane, because Harry Kane's like, I want to win trophies, but I want to stay in the Premier League and beat the goal scoring record. So he's kind of in a catch-22 where he's pretty much forced to be staying at Spurs. But his contract's up next season, so if Harry Kane does want to leave Spurs that badly, then he will leave. And I think he's only I think it's like 18 goals away from breaking the record. So even if he breaks it next season at Spurs, he can then just leave afterwards in that season, because apparently he doesn't want to extend his contract. So if he goes and breaks the goal scoring record next season, he's then free to go wherever he wants, because then he can then turn around and go, right, I'm the greatest scorer in the Premier League of all time. Do I stay in the Premier League on a free transfer, or do I go to Bayern Munich or Real Madrid? And Harry Kane is obviously, for me, a very good player, and he's one of the best, but I think it's more down to Daniel Levy and it's not down to the Glazers for once.
Yeah. So is it a fair assumption to say that if we don't get Harry Kane in this transfer window, that United may as well just not think about Harry Kane in the future?
I wouldn't say that, because Harry Kane is obviously very respectful of Man United. When you've seen him in interviews, he's turned around and said that this is one of the biggest clubs in England. So he has the respect towards Manchester United. He knows the history. And I think every player would if they were offered an opportunity to play for Manchester United, they'd take it with open arms. Like, unless they're probably an academy player like Bukayo Saka, for example. I feel like if Saka was offered to Man United, he'd probably say no. But if he was offered to somewhere like City or Real Madrid, I think he might take it, because these players. I feel like Man United has kind of lost its attractiveness. It's kind of like when you go on a night out and then you wake up next to a girl and she's not got her makeup on anymore, and you're like, "Fuck, what's this?" but with United, obviously, we're still a massive name, and I feel like with the Premier League getting bigger and bigger, with teams like Brighton and Brentford also on the rise, and Aston Villa, I feel like that with these teams, the Premier League is becoming more desirable, and European players are now starting to want to come to the Premier League. And you see players like Thuram of Nice, you see the likes of players from the Bundesliga saying that, I was a United fan growing up, I was a Liverpool fan growing up. These players are there, like, because they're now like players from like under 25 now, have now grown up with the Premier League being like starting to grow and get bigger. So it's more of the older players, I'd say like past 26, or players in their prime, that won't be that interested in the Premier League. They'll probably just come for a massive payday. But actual young players now that are coming through, that probably between the age of 18 and 23, they'll probably be like, you know what, my dream is to play in the Premier League. And they might be playing for Nice, like I said, and they're from the French league and they are from France. But then they're like, I was a Liverpool fan growing up, I want to join Liverpool. So I feel like that it's just also down to the Premier League itself as well.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, obviously, when I was a kid growing up, I always wanted to play for a big Premier League club. Obviously, my team's United, but I'd have been happy playing for any Premier League club. But unfortunately, I don't have the athletic ability to play for a Premier League club. Refereeing it, maybe, but not playing. Definitely not playing. But with you saying that about young people wanting to play for a Premier League club, obviously there's been a lot of talks over the years about Celtic and Rangers and whether they're too good for the Scottish Premiership and whether they should be invited to play in the Premier League. Now, what's your thoughts on that? Do you think Rangers and Celtic could do well in the Premier League, or do you think that they just completely and utterly flop?
I feel like that is an interesting topic. I mean, Celtic and Rangers for me, they are decent teams, but they're the stars of the Scottish League, and I feel like that they wouldn't jeopardise losing that, because I feel like that once Celtic and Rangers, if they were to leave the Scottish League is pretty much like, who's the biggest team after them? Probably Aberdeen, and I can't name, apart from Celtic, Rangers, and Aberdeen. I can't name another Scottish team. I mean, I don't follow Scottish football, but realistically as well, I personally feel like that Celtic and Rangers aren't good enough. I feel like that they'd definitely probably bottle it, and they might even get relegated. So I'd say that probably Rangers are worse than Celtic at the moment, but that's because obviously that new manager that they've had over the last 2 years, that's now gone to Spurs. But I think that for their sake, that they should, if they want to make themselves heard, then they need to perform well in Europe when they get them opportunities. I mean, Rangers, they went to the semi-finals of the Europa League. Yeah. Was it last season or the season before? So
was it the semi-finals or the finals?
I think it was the semi-finals, wasn't it? And was it? No, it was because they lost to Frankfurt in the semi-finals, and then it was West Ham versus Frankfurt in the final. I think not the season just gone, the season before. And obviously, our mate Lee, he was raging about it. But with Rangers and Celtic, I think that they are decent, and I think that maybe if they ever wanted to win a European competition, I'd say probably Conference League is their best bet. I mean, when you randomly see Celtic or Rangers in the Champions League, and I'm like, how the hell have they got there? But then they lose in the group stage, and you're just there like, well, that's easy. Like if you're a Man United, like let's say for example, right, the Champions League draw rolls around and United get Celtic, you're rubbing your hands together. You're like, bloody hell, that's pretty much an easy 6 points. But I do feel like that the Rangers and Celtic debate, they are historic teams, but I'd say that the Scottish League is probably their best cut out, and I would say that even if they tried to join the Premier League, it'd be good because of how much it would bring to the Premier League, how much extra fans and revenue it would bring to the Premier League. But I do feel like that they wouldn't be cut out for it, and I wouldn't say that. I'd say that they'd probably be a mid-table team at best.
Yeah, I mean, if you take into account like Rangers' performance in the Champions League, what was it last season when they played Liverpool and they got absolutely demolished. What was it, 7-0 or something, or 7-1, something like that?
It was something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and I get it all the time. I mean, obviously living in Scotland, I get it all the time. Like, oh, Scottish Premiership's too easy. I reckon we could take the Premier League. Well, I mean, there's all well and good saying that, but you need to back that up with actual results. You played Liverpool in the Champions League, and you got your asses handed to you on a silver platter. I mean, you can't go around saying, "Oh, we're better than any English club," and then lose to an English club.
Yeah.
It just can't happen.
Yeah, I mean, Rangers and Celtic, they are very historic clubs, and they always will be there.
Yeah.
Fans have a lot of passion behind them, but it's like James Tavernier. James Tavernier is probably one of Rangers' best players, and Rangers fans, aka Lee, goes on about how he's the best right back in the world, and like saying that how's he not got a massive Premier League club move, because obviously they don't rate him, and that's it. Because he might look like prime Cafu in the Scottish League, but then when you've got Mo Salah running at you or Marcus Rashford, you're probably gonna look like Harry Maguire at right back.
Yeah, exactly.
That's no disrespect to James Tavernier, because he's probably a much better footballer than I am. I can't even do so I'm a fan with an opinion, and I would just say that players like that just aren't cut out for the Premier League.
Yeah, exactly.
And just to make another thing as well. I feel like that Rangers and Celtic need the Premier League more than the Premier League need them, because they would obviously earn a massive amount of revenue and a massive amount of extra funding, and that's how they'd increase as a club. But the Scottish League doesn't give them that extra revenue, so that's probably why they'd rather join the Premier League than stay in the Scottish League. That's probably the only debate, really. But again, like I just said, I feel like that they need the Premier League more than the Premier League need them, and if they were to somehow get in the Premier League, then I personally feel like you put them in the Championship, or you even put them in League Two, and then they have to build themselves up. That's the way I think it should be.
Yeah, I mean, would they go for that though? Going from the Scottish Premiership down to like League Two?
Yeah, I'd say that's a bit harsh, but I'd say that maybe if it was to happen, then how do you terminate two teams? Because that makes no sense, because realistically, if they were to join, they're taking two teams' place. So they'd have to do some sort of thing. They can't just get handed into the Championship and be like, you know what, you've got one team
Well,
in the Premier League.
Yeah, well, I mean, Rangers know what it's like to have to rebuild anyway. I mean, after when they got kicked out of the Scottish Premiership, what was it, 9 years ago now, I think it was. Lee, if you're watching this, you can comment and tell me if I'm wrong on that one. But when they got kicked out of the Scottish Prem, they had to rebuild and build themselves back up. So could Rangers do it if they were plunked in League Two? Yes. Could Celtic? Quite easily. Would they like having to do that? No. Maybe starting them off in the Championship seems like a fair place to put them.
Yeah, I mean, with with Celtic and Rangers, like I said, like if they were to be added to the Premier League or added to the Championship or any English league, then you are getting rid of two teams, and you can't random, like with the Championship, they have, what is it, 24 teams they have in the Championship. So if they were, because I think they play.
Is it 24 or did they go to 26?
I think they play. I can't remember. It might be 24 or 26 teams. Yeah, I think it's 24. But with that, if they were to be added, then they'd be 26 to 28 teams, and that's like 46 games in a season that you're having to play. That's ridiculous. Plus domestic competitions, and obviously, you know, it's hard because, and that's why I think it's just such an unrealistic thing that it'd probably have to be a long process, and they'd have to agree on terms that they would have to then be. They're no longer a Scottish league. They're now an English team, and they have to do what every other English team does, and that's build up from the bottom. So look at Wrexham. They were in national football, and then they've obviously been promoted to League Two. So now they're going to rebuild and start their English career. So that's where. So for me, as a neutral, I would say that if they really wanted to join the English league so badly, then they have to go through what everyone else does, and that's be going to the bottom and having to work the ways up. And if they are good enough, like Scottish fans claim they are, then they'll be in the Premier League within 4 or 5 seasons.
Yeah, I agree with that actually. Yeah, I completely agree with that. But what we'll do now is we'll move on to the new segment of the show, and that's Transfer Corner. Now, obviously, the transfer window opens tomorrow. So these are all speculations and stuff that Sky Sports have been talking about over the last couple of days. So we'll have a discussion about it, and then we'll see what happens during the transfer window when it opens tomorrow. But we'll start off with Liverpool, because one transfer that we already know that's signed, sealed, and delivered is McAllister. Now, obviously, moving from Brighton to Liverpool, that's if you went back 5 years ago and said, "Oh, McAllister's just moved from Brighton to Liverpool, that's a huge jump," I'd agree with you. If you said that now, I wouldn't be too sure, because Brighton last season played their hearts out. Yeah, I mean, they didn't get as high up the table as what they might have hoped, but they did really well, and they gave a lot of the big six teams a run for their money. So my question to you, Dan, is: do you think McAllister's move from Brighton to Liverpool was a good one, or do you think that's where his career is going to slowly die?
I wouldn't say that because I feel like that McAllister joining Liverpool is a great signing for Liverpool, and I feel like that McAllister is getting that extra step in quality.
Mm.
But with Brighton, I've had this opinion, and I spoke to a Brighton fan on a Premier League fan show about 2 months ago. It was before the FA Cup semi final that we United and Brentford play United and Brighton played in. But
Yeah,
I said to her that okay, for me, I personally feel like the reason why De Zerbi is doing so well at Brighton is not because of the tactics. No, sorry, it's not because of the players. It's down to the tactics. And I personally feel like Graham Potter doing very well with Brighton on the rise of him. I personally think he was holding them back, and De Zerbi has got the best out of these players, and they've actually
yeah,
shown that they can compete with the top six, and they've done that by getting
yeah,
into the Europa League. So
yeah,
for me, I personally feel like that Brighton are one of them teams that can they've already got their McAllister replacement. They know what they're doing. They're a very brilliantly ran club that play by the
yeah,
rules. Their development is absolutely world class. And I personally feel like that. I mean, I watched the McAllister interview when he joined Liverpool, and he turned around and said that the reason why I didn't join a Champions League club is because I feel like I'm not ready for a Champions League football. And I was like, okay, it makes sense, but
yeah,
Liverpool and Brighton are in the same European competition in the Europa League. So why are you joining Liverpool? You might as well just stayed at Brighton. So obviously you can understand why, but this is also the man who's literally just won a World Cup. So if he hasn't got the
yeah,
Champions League mentality, then I don't understand what mentality he wants. Like surely, maybe he's just being a bit passive, and he's just like, you know what, I'm not ready for the Champions League yet. And I want to learn with you because don't forget they've not played European football before, so he might want a bit of a stepping stone
no,
and a bit of an easier ride to start and progress his career because he's only 23, 24. He's got many years ahead
yeah,
of him. He's a very good player, and for 35 million, I think it's an absolute steal. So with McAllister, I
yeah,
think it's a great move to Liverpool, but I also kind of question it that why he actually left Brighton because clearly when Brighton were trying to sign him on a new contract he put a release clause in his contract which Brighton don't normally do, but they didn't want him to leave on a free, so they signed to his contract. And obviously, with the World Cup, his price tag just drastically increased, and he's probably worth about 40 to 50 million. And his release clause is
yeah,
only £35 million, so it's an absolute bargain for whoever gets it for Liverpool getting him.
yeah. I mean, the only thing that I can put it down to him leaving Brighton and going to Liverpool, even though that both them teams are in Europa next season, is it that he wants to be in a club that has experienced players who have played in European competitions like the Champions League and the Europa League, instead of playing for Brighton, who haven't been in a European competition before? It was that his thinking. Is it? Oh, if I go to Liverpool, I've got more of a chance of getting more European football time than I have with Brighton.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
then it throws. But then it throws the question of: is that disloyal? Is that disloyalty to Brighton because he's played for them? Is he showing disloyalty that he doesn't and not being a team player and that he doesn't have the confidence in his teammates?
maybe, but realistically, obviously, you want to play for the best. You want to be the best, and I feel
Yeah,
like that with Jurgen Klopp, we know what he's done with certain players, and
yeah,
he's an outstanding coach. And De Zerbi, yes, he's done really well tactically with Brighton, but realistically, who's he actually brought through yet? You've got that Encenso
yeah,
who's joined late into the Premier League, who's doing really well, but Matoma was doing well under under what's he called, Graham Potter.
yeah,
So it's one of them situations, and if McAllister
yeah,
feels comfortable with joining Liverpool, then obviously that's all for him. But I feel like Liverpool is kind of like I mentioned before with United, how their name is kind of faded. Liverpool, because of their recent success, their name's very big. But realistically, if you watch how they played last season, how they got fifth was beyond me. It's kind of like how United were under the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Ralf Rangnick the season before,
Yeah,
where
yeah, it was.
Ronaldo
Yeah,
and Ronaldo and David De Gea saved our season. That was Alisson and Mo Salah. This season for Liverpool, how they got
yeah,
where they were was absolutely brilliant. And I feel like that Liverpool are in massive transition. They're expected to get 2 more midfielders this summer, plus a defender, a left-sided defender. So they're looking at getting some other signings,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I
Because I
look
mean,
forward to
I
seeing it.
seen on I seen on Sky Sport on the Sky Sports News app that one of the players that's rumored that they're linked to is Ward-Prowse. Now, I don't know whether that's true that they're linking with him and potentially going to sign him, but do you think he'd be a good fit for Liverpool?
Who did you say? Sorry, Ward-Prowse.
Yeah,
Yeah. With Ward-Prowse, I'd say that. I mean, he's also linked to Aston Villa, and I feel like Aston Villa
mm,
would probably be a better move for him. But because I feel like if James Ward-Prowse went straight to Liverpool, I feel like for me, I feel like Ward-Prowse is a good player. He's definitely a big fish at a small pond
yeah,
at Southampton, but kind of like it's hard to explain. Like he's in a tiny little pond, and like let's say I don't know, he's probably just a normal carp, but because it's like I don't know about 10 feet, the pond it's tiny. But then if you throw him in the ocean, he looks like a speck, and like a
yeah,
shark just randomly eats him. Like I feel like that might what happened. It might be too big of a jump for him. I mean, you look at Jack Grealish, how long it took him to adapt from Aston Villa to Man City.
yeah,
So I feel like that with Ward-Prowse, it's hard to explain, but with Liverpool losing James Milner to Brighton and John Henderson looking like he's aging as well, and they're selling Naby Keita, they have a massive hole in
yeah,
the midfield. So I'd say whoever they sign in the midfield, it'll be a lot of pressure because no doubt they'll end up being the starting 11.
yeah. But I mean, this is another one that I've seen as well. But Firmino is apparently meant to be linked with Real Madrid on a potential move. I mean, I mean, obviously, I don't know how true that is because this is the first time that I'm hearing it. But I would have thought that if Firmino was potentially going to move to Real Madrid, that would be highly talked about. Because I mean, Firmino's been at Liverpool for what, like about 4 or 5 years now? Is it
Yeah,
6 years
it's been a
maybe?
while. And I know that because what happened because United were linked to him under Mourinho, and then within like 48 hours, he went from Monaco to Liverpool because like Klopp got
Yeah,
the deal done. So I know because I remember that because United were linked to it, but yeah, under Mourinho, it was about 4 or 5 years ago. But
yeah,
obviously, we'll speak. It was just talking about Real Madrid as well. Obviously, I'll mention this to you that Real Madrid are linked to play. Obviously, they've recently just bought Jude Bellingham, but recently they've obviously just recently lost Asensio, Eden Hazard, and Benzema. So their wage bill is dropped down by I think it's 45 million euros a season. Is how much it's dropped down.
right.
And for the last 3 seasons, they've not been spending big in the transfer markets. Obviously, they sold Casemiro to us recently, and
Yeah,
just over the time. I mean, in the season that United bought Varane, Arsenal bought Ødegaard off him, and they've sold players like Hakimi and stuff for like 40 million euros. And the way that they've done their business over the last 3 years to avoid FFP, they've spent next to none. And now I feel like with Barcelona absolutely smashing them this season under Xavi, I do feel like that now they're like, shit, we need to like get heavy investments. That's why I feel like they've brought
yeah,
Jude Bellingham. They're linked to Kylian Mbappe. They're probably going to be linked to Fabinho. They're going to be linked to a lot of world-class players. And Fabinho's not had the best season for Liverpool this season, but I still think he's a very class player. So
yeah,
with Real Madrid, I do feel like that they're definitely will probably definitely try and get Fabinho, and Fabinho is what I think is like 29 or something, so probably just coming out of his
yeah,
prime. He is a very decent player, and I definitely have him at United if he had the opportunity, maybe as a backup because there's no Casemiro, but United don't have
yeah.
a backup CDM. So again, though, but if
No,
City are getting rid, if Liverpool are getting rid of Fabinho, then that's another midfielder they have to replace. So
yeah.
it's really
I
how
mean,
Liverpool want to do their transitions and business.
Yeah, I mean, Firmino's going to definitely be a player to watch during the transfer window and see where he does end up, whether he does end up at Liverpool or if he does end up at Real Madrid. Um, but I mean, going on to Manchester United now, your area of expertise. Obviously, recently it came out that Mason Greenwood has been accepted back into Manchester United. Slightly controversial, given everything that had happened. United have now said that they're going to possibly send him out on loan. Now, where do you think we were right in taking Greenwood back, and do you think it's right that we're sending him out on loan? What's your thoughts?
I mean, with the Greenwood situation, it's one of them, and obviously, I don't know every single detail, but you are right. I have heard that United are keeping him on the pay books, but as well, what I found out through a journalist that I've spoken to, that even ever since the incident has happened, and since Mason Greenwood and this whole incident has happened, especially under the court case, Mason Greenwood has still been being paid by Manchester United because he's still in contract with Manchester United, even though suspended from the club. His contract's not been terminated, so he's still getting paid
Yeah,
weekly from Man United. So he's probably, I think he's on 80 grand a week or something. So he's literally been making 80 grand a week for the last 18 to 20 months for nothing. And
yeah,
his contract ends in June 2024. So my argument is, and this is what I've mentioned, that despite Man United saying they're keeping Greenwood, what I think might be happening is that we're going to send Greenwood on loan for a season, and then when that loan spell is over, his contract is up with Manchester United. So maybe it's more of United thinking out for Greenwood's career. He can go to another country, get a loan, and try and make himself put himself in the shop window. And then what's going to happen is when he comes back to United off that loan spell, he's then off contract with Man United. So Man United can be like, you know what? Obviously, we've done what we've needed to do. We don't want to sign you. Like you're a free transfer. Go and find another club, like in the nicest way
yeah,
possible. Because that's why I think that the best case scenario happens. United don't keep Greenwood. Greenwood gets his football development up and running again, and then if he catches the attention of certain clubs, then he can get his move and continue as a professional footballer. Because whether it's true or not, worse players have been still playing football and stayed at the clubs. I mean, there's a player called Quincy Promes from a few seasons ago,
yeah,
and he played for Ajax, and then he was arrested for stabbing his cousin, and he still played. He still played for Ajax for about 6 months, and then he got
yeah.
arrested, and then now he's playing football in Russia in the Dominican Republic or something. I think it is. So I think
All right.
I think it's Moscow or something, the Moscow team or something that he's playing for. So and recently he's been arrested for smuggling over 13,000 kilograms of cocaine over the last 4 years. So
Oh Jesus.
with Quincy Promes, obviously he's just a bit of a naughty boy, let's say. But
Yeah,
but again, it's like you think back to Adam Johnson, Kurt Zuma. I mean, Kurt Zuma kicked a
yeah,
cat. Like, obviously, it's not as bad as like supposedly beating up your girlfriend, but
yeah,
Kurt Zuma's still playing football, and he's still around, and he accepted the fine, he accepted the abuse and stuff. But like anything, eventually it goes away, and
yeah,
I feel like that loads of fans would say Mason Greenwood would receive so much abuse and stuff. But I feel like after about, I don't know, about 3 months of seeing him in the Premier League, the abuse will stop. So you might get the
yeah,
few odd chance every now and again saying like woman beater or something. But realistically, I don't think it'll be as bad as everyone makes it out to be. If you was to ask me,
no,
would I have Mason Greenwood back at United? I don't know. Because I feel like that I'm not going to be a hypocrite here, and I'm going to say yes, because I feel like that with what I've just said, so many players have still gone on to play football
Mm.
their careers. And the reports are that Mason Greenwood's broke his bail, but the girl that he's with is pregnant with his child. Like,
All right.
it's like if she was that terrified and that petrified of him because he beat her up, why spread your legs for him? Like, it makes
Yeah.
no sense. So unless she's cheated and it's not his child and she's claiming it is to be his child, so she still gets money off him. I have no
Yeah.
idea, but it's all if buts and maybes. But for me, I personally feel like the best thing that needs to happen for both of them is that they need to come on TV show or do an interview or something, both of them, and say exactly what happened and clear the air, because whatever happened, that needs to be addressed. But the charges have been dropped from her side, so realistically, in the eyes of the law and eyes of the court, he is then innocent. And
Yeah.
if in the UK, the law is you are innocent until proven guilty. So as the
Yeah.
courts have announced that the charges have been dropped, there's not enough evidence that they can conclude. So there is it that Mason Greenwood is therefore innocent. So to me, he then should become a Man United player again. That's how I look at it. And then
Yeah.
obviously you just see what happens from there. Obviously, it's not a comfortable situation. I'm not like someone like says we need Mason Greenwood back, because if Mason Greenwood was decided not to be a Manchester United player, I'd agree with it. I'd be like, you know what, I can understand why. But if you're asking my
Yeah.
opinion, I would say that if he was to come back from Man United, I wouldn't be that arsed, really.
No. But moving on from Mason Greenwood now, and moving on to another Mason, but we'll move on to Mason Mount. Now, we've been linked with Mount for a fair bit now, and if I remember correctly from what I read this morning, we've now made an actual bid for him. So, with the transfer window opening tomorrow, do you think that that's going to be the first announcement that United have signed Mason Mount?
I don't think so, because the way I look at it, and this is just me thinking outside the box here, and I'm not giving you the standard other United channels, because the reason for Red Devils TV, my channel, is that I try and speak as honestly as possible. I don't hide behind a character. I don't
Yeah.
like act like someone that I'm not, and I try and feed bullshit to my audience. Like, even though it's only about 6 viewers, but at the end of the day, I try and speak as honestly as possible. And for United haven't even officially released any kits yet. So as we know, United don't buy players until the kits are released. So what will probably happen is that I won't be surprised in the next week or two the kit is announced, and then we do announce a player, but hopefully the sale's done by then. And I personally feel like why
Yeah.
United are linked to all these players is that Eric Ten Hag has given the board the players that he wants and his scouts that he wants to go scout. And obviously, with the Glazers doing their purchase, I think Eric Ten Hag knows what's going on. I think Eric Ten Hag already knows the club's been sold, and I think that Eric Ten Hag has already planned for everything to be put in place. So I feel like
Yeah.
once the announcement is made, that's when you'll see the likes of everyone joining Man United, and all the players that we're linked to
Right.
will get the confirmation about who's joining and who's not. But with Mason
Mm.
Mount, obviously we've agreed personal terms. That's been done for the last few
Yeah.
weeks. And the transfer fee I've not heard of. So obviously, if that's breaking news from what you've heard this morning, I've been in work, so I've not really been on Twitter this morning. But with Mason Mount, if we have made a bid for him, then I'm going to guess it's probably about 40 to 50 million, because Chelsea are set on 70 million pounds plus add-ons. So United, from what I've
Yeah.
heard, the United won't pay anything over 50 million for him. So I'm going to guess United try a low ball here. So I really don't understand what's going on with Mason Mount. But if you was to ask me, would I take him at Man United? Absolutely. And I feel like that so many fans would be like, Mason Mount's not good enough for Man United. But for me, I feel like that you can use the argument. He's better than Van der Beek. He's better than Ericsson. He's better than McTominay. He's better than Fred. So four of our midfielders, he's better than. So why wouldn't you take him? And
Yeah.
then they just don't say anything to you. And when you get into that debate with people on Twitter, it's always funny because you end up blocked or they don't respond to you, and you're just there like,
Yeah.
because I've proven you wrong, that even though Mason Mount isn't an ideal signing that you would make, if you want to progress as a football club, you have to make these upgrading signings. I'm not saying Mason Mount is going to be a Man United player for the rest of his career, because that might not be the case. We might go and buy it and like the next Jude Bellingham or something, and that will replace Mason Mount in the future. But right now, United's midfield is very stinky, and we need upgrades. And for me, I do feel like Mason Mount would be a good upgrade.
Yeah, he was. And I've just been having a look there myself, and I am going to recorrect myself. We haven't made a bid yet, but we are in the process of putting in a formal bid very soon for
And
Mason Mount. So,
and that process will continue once the club's sold and once the new
yeah,
shirt is out, because the Glazers aren't going to announce a new kit without someone to put in it. They're not going to do that.
no,
That's the way they've always been. You think back to when we
yeah,
had Cristiano Ronaldo, or Varane, or no, sorry, it was Sancho, wasn't it? Sancho was the
yeah,
guy who was announced the new kit, and this season I think it was Martinez who announced the new kit,
right,
because we had Malacia who joined first, and he was in the new training kit. And then I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks later, just as pre-season ended, we announced Sandro Martinez, and he was in the new kit.
right, okay. So, we'll just have to see what happens. I mean, we know. I mean, the one thing we know for definite is that the transfer window opens tomorrow. So it's just going to be a case of between tomorrow morning when the transfer window opens, how long after the transfer window opens do United release their kit? And then how long after that until we start seeing more things from United coming out?
Well, obviously,
The sale of the Glaziers.
yeah. I mean, today, Mark Goldbridge, Stretford Paddock, all these big United fan channels, they've been all saying today that today is the day with the Qataris. I personally feel like that if these experts are saying it's as close as people making it out to be, I'd probably say that it's we're done within the week. And if everyone's saying that, and from what people have supposedly said, I mean, I gave my analogy before about how they've been losing this race, and then they've just gone, right, we're losing this race now. There's your money, take it or leave it. And obviously the Glazers are going to accept, because I feel like they're massively overpaid. They're probably going to pay
Yeah.
about 6.5 to 7 billion pounds. So for Man United, for that, obviously that's what's going to happen. So
Yeah.
So I personally feel like that this is the fan in me talking, that I hope it's done within the week, because then the transfer window's open, we can then release the kit, and then we can then go through there. Because the reason why I feel like the kit's not been released yet is because we don't know if we're going to get a new sponsor yet. Because with the new owners, they might want a new sponsor for the kit, and obviously we've got TeamViewer currently. But they might want something like to announce their arrival, like, I don't know, let's have Lamborghini or something, or Bugatti on the front of the shirt,
Yeah.
or I don't know, like just another massive brand instead of TeamViewer. So, but
I
from
mean, I
what
would have
these
thought that with the Qataris, they would have gone with because I don't know whether
Qatar
it was just someone messing around or whether it was actual or whether it's actual kits that United would go with if we got the Qataris. But as you just said, Qatar Airways.
yeah, I
So
mean, maybe.
yeah, it's just a waiting game on that one, isn't it? And seeing which one happens first. Does the sale happen first, or does the kit get released first? That's what we've just got to look at really and see which one happens first. But we'll move on to the last team. I know we've already discussed them a fair bit in the video today, but just want to go over Tottenham a little bit, because one that I did see was Maddison. Now, I know that Maddison, there's been a lot of talks about him with Newcastle, but I noticed that this morning that both Spurs and Newcastle are in a battle to get Maddison. Now, obviously, Leicester have just been relegated from the Premier League back to the Championship. So, is Maddison looking for an out to get back into the Premiership, or is this two teams looking at options to sign a player to fill gaps that they might lose?
Definitely. I think he's definitely tried to get a move. And from what the report, I mean, Tielemans has already joined Aston Villa. So that shows that he wants to stay in the Premier League. And I feel like with James
Yeah,
Maddison as well, James Maddison, he wants to obviously stay. He wants to move and get a new club as well. I mean, Newcastle have been in for James Maddison for multiple transfer windows now, and Spurs, I feel like it'd be a great signing for Spurs. I mean, for me, James
yeah,
Maddison is a very good footballer. But as I mentioned before, where United need upgrade in the midfield, I think that's the only position United don't need upgrades in the midfield because of Bruno Fernandes. So for me, James Maddison, whether he go, because I feel like what Spurs are missing is that creative midfielder because of how defensively they play. So maybe under this
yeah,
Postecoglou, this new Tottenham manager, he might want that creative midfielder. So, and again, Newcastle need one as well. They've got Bruno Guimaraes, they've got obviously Joe Willock, they've got whoever else is in the midfield, but they're also lacking a proper creative midfielder. So with them teams,
yeah,
it'll be good. It'll be a good signing for both of them. And with Tottenham, I think that with this new manager playing attacking football, James Maddison to Spurs would probably be very likely.
yeah. I mean, I'd like to see Madison back in the Premier League because I mean, during the time that Leicester were in the Premier League, he looked like a formidable player and he looked pretty strong. Was he in the wrong team at the time? Probably. I mean, yeah, all right, Liverpool. All right, I nearly said Liverpool then. All right, Leicester won the Premier League in 2015-16 season, was it? Yeah, 2015-16 season. And that was, I know a lot. I know quite a few people say that, oh, that was a fluke. But I mean, if you look at that team at the time, that was a really good team. I mean, you had Madison, you had Vardy. Vardy was unstoppable during that season. So seeing Madison back in the Premier League, I would like that. I don't know which team I'd prefer him to go to, whether that would be Spurs or Newcastle. I think he'd have a better run. I think he'd have a better playing time at Newcastle than he would at Spurs,
Yeah,
personally.
yeah, but like I said, obviously Eddie Howe kind of develops this formation that they've obviously very defensively dropped back and the counter
Yeah,
attack. That's the way they play football. With this new Spurs manager, he plays attacking football, and I think it's what's his name, Jota for Celtic. He's kind of a winger and creative player for Celtic, and he's kind of their standout player. And he kind of would be playing the similar role to what what Madison might do. So obviously they're completely different players, but with
yeah,
obviously Madison, I'd say that maybe he'd probably actually do better at Tottenham for game time wise because you think back to like who is really a standout player for Spurs for a midfielder. You've got Harry Winks, you've got Oliver Skip, you've got Ben Tanker, who's probably their best midfielder. You've got Højbjerg, but
yeah,
the way they used to play football was a back five with two in the midfield and three up top.
yeah.
There's no space for James Maddison in that formation. So with this
No,
new formation being a 4-3-3, probably a bit more dominating football, I won't be surprised that James Maddison might be the star player. And plus, this new manager, that'll be his new signing, and it'll be his priority signing, his main signing, and it might be like, I want to make a name for myself here at Spurs. James Maddison's going to be the player that's going to take me there, and that's probably why. But I feel like with the way Eddie Howe plays football. I don't rate Eddie Howe. I think he's a decent manager, but I don't think he deserves manager of the season like all the pundits have said. I think that he's a bang
no.
average manager with a very good team. He reminds me of Graham Potter at Brighton, and I guarantee you,
Yeah,
if you put someone like I don't know Nagelsmann, who's just lost his job to Bayern Munich, guarantee if he went to Newcastle, you see Newcastle challenging for the league because they'd get the right
yeah,
players in. They get the play into a decent brand of football. And the thing is as well, even though Newcastle have had a very decent season, they drew 11 times. Like it's not like they were
yeah,
completely playing players. They weren't playing teams off the park. They were gaining a lot of points through draws.
yeah. Yeah, they were. Um, I mean, Newcastle season is going to be an interesting one. If they get Madison, then it's going to be even more interesting just to see how Madison filters in with the Newcastle players. But I mean, Newcastle have got Champions League football, which is the first time since, if I'm correct, since Alan Shearer was a player at Newcastle.
Yeah,
So Newcastle already have a have a big season ahead of them already.
I think it's going to be too
So
much for him.
yeah, personally, I do. I think it's either you concentrate on one or the other. You, Newcastle, for me, I don't think they could concentrate on both.
Yeah, and that's the thing because maybe the plan is because they did so well in the league. Maybe the plan is to probably you want to win every single game, but sometimes you have got to be
Yeah,
realistic. And I feel like that Newcastle will definitely lose in the group stage. But maybe if they're lucky, they get knocked down to Europa League. That's probably the best
yeah,
chance I'd say that they have. But the thing is like it's not like Aston Villa or Brighton of how they've done about how they've just gained European football. Newcastle have gone straight with the big boys. They haven't got like Conference League where they're going to play Orlando Pirates or just some random Ukraine team. They're going to be playing
yeah,
with very good teams. They're going to be playing with teams like Real Madrid, Barcelona, United,
yeah,
City, like PSG. They're going to be playing all these massive clubs. And I feel like they don't have enough quality. And European football is very different to English football. And
yeah,
obviously you think you like people thought that they were going to absolutely blow Inter Milan out of the water the other night. It was for me Inter Milan were the better side. Plus, City just obviously are just that good. They just did well. But
yeah,
yeah, for me, I definitely feel like that Newcastle will struggle. But that's just my opinion.
yeah. No, I agree with that as well. And I think do I see him getting? Do I see him staying in the Champions League long enough to prove me wrong? No. Will he end up dropping down to the Europa League? Yes, I do potentially see that. I think they need to concentrate more on the Premier League and trying to become one of the new top six. Well, I mean, you can't replace the original top six, but you know
For
what I
me,
mean.
I think that what they need to actually do is something for the fans, and I think they need to win a trophy next season. So I say that maybe if they're
Yeah,
looking at a domestic cup, is the
yeah,
better option. I mean, they could go on another season like Leicester did. Obviously, we mentioned that it was kind of a fluke season, but you know, Newcastle again. I like United. They're linked to so many different players, but
yeah,
at the end of the day, their owners apparently only give them 75 million to spend in the summer. 75 million for a team that's just been promoted to the Champions League. So you literally,
yeah,
if you want to buy a world class player, you aren't getting him for you're getting one player all summer. So that's why I think that he also won't get James Madison.
yeah. I mean that. I mean that amount of money. It's a lot of people will probably say, "Oh, well, that's a lot of money, though." But in terms of football, that's finding loose change in your back pocket. Like it's nothing at the end of the day. So it this transfer window is going to be really interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what players come in, and it's going to be even more interesting to see what players go out because I know that a lot of United fans are wanting particular players to leave the club. Um, I'm not going to mention any because we're going to close off the video for today. But if anyone wants to know what players United are wanting out, head over to Dan's channel and have a look through his videos because he has covered it a fair few number of times. So go and check those out if you want to know what United players the club's wanting to leave. But Dan, if you just want to sign off and tell everyone where we can find you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Thomas. So with you can find me on Red Devils TV. That's my United YouTube channel that Thomas has just mentioned, and I also have a TikTok where I just do kind of just shorter videos, just to like telling stories and kind of more non-neutral football almost, where I talked about Zlatan Ibrahimovic's retirement and stuff. So you can find me on there. So if you could subscribe, that'd be absolutely amazing. Thank you for having me, Thomas, as well.
No problem. Thanks for coming on, Dan. Guys, the next video will be out probably next week after the fixtures have been announced, and I've had a good chance to have a look through every single fixture, and I'm able to talk about each one and which ones to look out for during the season. Hopefully, if Dan is available, I will try and get him on as well, plus some other people from other clubs, so that we can have a big discussion about the new season's fixtures and see if by then Dan's views on the predictions for who's going to get relegated and who's going to be in the top four has changed, because probably by the time that I do the video, the transfer window will have been open for about a week. So we'll see if Dan's predictions has changed at the next video, if he's able to join. But Dan, thank you ever so much for joining. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you for watching the video, and I will see you all on the next one.